Well, thank you again, everybody, for joining us on such short notice. Good morning. Thank you for being with us here today. My name is Joe Saunders. My pronouns are he and him. I'm the Senior Political Director for Equality Florida, Florida's LGBTQ civil rights organization, and I am joining you from my home in Miami Beach. Today, we have gathered for you a collection of advocates who are ready to share their stories and speak with you about the devastating harms of Florida's attacks on the LGBTQ community and on our freedoms. Now, as I invite each of our speakers to speak, for you, my colleagues in the press, please add your questions to the chat. We have plenty of time reserved to take all questions. We have over 40 press outlets who have joined us here today, representing local, state, and national media organizations, and we're here to talk with you, to answer your questions, and to shine a spotlight on the harms of these bills. So today, to get us set in the right posture, I want to make sure folks understand what has happened. Today, Governor Ron DeSantis signed 4 anti-LGBTQ bills into law. Those bills include House Bill 1069, the Don't Say LGBTQ Expansion bill, which expands the ban in statute on classroom instruction on sexual orientation and gender identity up through middle school. It bans the use of pronouns of trans and non-binary teachers and students in schools, and it doubles down on Governor Ron DeSantis's book banning policies. The second bill signed was Senate Bill 254, the Gender Affirming Care Ban, which bans life-saving healthcare for transgender youth. It bans local governments in Florida from providing transgender employees with healthcare, and it dramatically restricts access to healthcare for transgender adults in ways that our speakers will discuss in more detail today. The third bill was House Bill 1521, the anti-trans bathroom bill, which makes it a criminal offense for transgender Floridians or tourists to use bathrooms that align with their gender identity, and threatens jail sentences for using a bathroom at public buildings like airports, convention centers, schools, prisons, or even our city halls. The fourth bill signed was House Bill 1423, the anti-drag bill. This is a bill that threatens pride events and small businesses with criminal penalties for allowing Floridians under 18 from watching some kinds of drag shows and drag performances, regardless of a parent's approval or a parent's involvement. Now, all of this today comes just days after the governor signed SB 1580, the License to Discriminate in Healthcare bill, and weeks after the governor signed an extreme 6-week abortion ban. So here's what's important to know. Governor Ron DeSantis has just signed into law the largest slate of anti-LGBTQ bills in Florida's history. And we receive this as it is intended, as an all-out attack on freedom. Free states don't strip parents of the right to make healthcare decisions for their children. Free states don't ban books, they don't censor curriculum, and they don't muzzle free speech. Ron DeSantis doesn't see freedom as a value worth defending. He sees it as a campaign slogan in his bid for the White House. And he is setting freedom and Florida's reputation ablaze in his desperation to win the GOP nomination. So we are here to make clear that the nation should be on high alert. Because today, we are all Floridians, as Governor DeSantis starts his march to export this so-called blueprint of authoritarianism to the rest of the country. Next, I'd like to bring to our virtual stage here a leader in the fight for transgender equality here in Florida and the president of the Florida LGBTQ Democratic Caucus, Nathan Brumer.
Thank you, Joe. My name is Nathan Brumer. I use he, him pronouns. I'm a lifelong Floridian, born and raised in this great state, the Sunshine State. I'm not going to focus about the words on the page, the bills that Joe just reviewed. They're both complex and vague, but the reaction within the trans community to what has come before us with this just remarkable slate of hate coming forward from our electeds. The fear and the pain and the harms that I think our community, that I, as a transgender man who grew up in this state, was educated in this state, raised my family in this state, have been proud to be a Floridian, are legitimate fears that these actions will fan the flames of hatred and bigotry and homophobia and transphobia in our state. And many in the community, I think, are really struggling to comprehend what it will mean. But we know those impacts, those harms will be real, and I think we fear ultimately tragic. However, more than ever, what I see in the response from communities and from friends across the state, the resilience and a steadfast resolve to respond to this, united together as leaders, as organizations, as communities, to fight back against these circumstances, these attacks on our freedoms, is something I don't think I've seen for many, many, many years. Our day-to-day existence, our thriving, working here, living out our version of the American dreams. Many have moved here, folks have hoped to retire here. This is an amazing tapestry of a state, and what has come forward does not represent what is the best of Florida. And ultimately, unified in action, I know our community will come back. And in the moment, I want to balance, though, the concerns, but I also want to honor both that resilience and that resolve. I think there are a lot of unanswered questions, and I know a lot of community members will be reaching out to organizations and to our leaders for those answers, and more will become clear. But in this moment, we are unified and we are resolved. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you so much, Nathan. And to our friends in the press, I've thrown how to spell Nathan's name and his title in the chat. For our speakers, as you join us, please do, just for the the sake of our press friends on the call, repeat your name, say what city you live in, your pronouns, and your title. Next, I'd like to bring up to our stage Jen Cousins.
Hi, thank you, Joe. My name is Jen Cousins. I am in Orlando. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the co-founder of the Florida Freedom to Read Project, as well as a mom of 4 public school kids here in Orlando. With the passage of 1069 today, what we're seeing is an even further attack on our LGBTQ plus students, our educators, the things that they assured us last year when they passed 1557 and they said, no, it's not about that. They proved today that that's what it was about. In his press conference this morning, the governor even said that they had to expand it to pre-K because they had found this past year that teachers were circumventing the law of 1557 by trying to indoctrinate pre-Kers with gender ideology and sexual orientation, which we know is patently false. This bill is now going to allow any person who lives in any district, whether or not they have children, to challenge books that are in the school district. And if they challenge it on the basis of sexual content, the book now must be removed from the district within 5 days, which a lot of school districts do not hold that policy. They allow books to remain on shelves while they are being challenged. We're looking at over 1,000 unique book titles just in the past year alone have been challenged in Florida. And now this is going to guarantee you double at the very least. And we know that the main targets of these challenges are books that are either written by LGBTQ plus authors or feature LGBTQ plus themes. They also go after books about people of color, about African-American history. Recently, books about the Holocaust have been challenged by the right, and this law is just going to empower them to go even further. It does not protect parental rights of everybody. My parental rights are being violated by laws like this because it's going to allow people who are not accepting of families like mine, where I have 2 queer children, to dictate what my children can learn in school. Their parental rights stop where mine begin, but that's not what this law allows them to do. We've seen instances where a principal in Leon County was just recently forced to resign from a classical school, nonetheless, which is the schools that DeSantis and his cronies prefer, simply because an art history book had a picture of the statue of David in it. It's outrageous to be attacking classical art like this. We now have the case in Wakulla County where a 5th grade teacher is being investigated by the DOE simply for showing a PG-rated Disney movie only because it has a gay character in it. And that is even overstepping 1557, which only goes to 3rd grade. So, once again, they're out of hand. They're going after our LGBTQ plus community. But like Nathan said, we all stand united and we are here to fight as hard as we can to protect our LGBTQ plus kids, our educators, and anybody else that we need in our community. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Jen. And anyone, I'm already seeing some questions hitting the chat. Please do throw them in there. We've got a team of folks from our policy department ready to answer technical questions and even broad questions. And of course, our speakers are ready to answer any questions around the subject matter that they cover in their statements today. Next, I want to bring to our virtual stage a parent, a longtime advocate for LGBTQ youth, and a leader in PFLAG Miami, Jennifer Solomon.
Thank you, Joe. My name is Jennifer Solomon. I apologize, I have laryngitis, so I sound a little bit froggy. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the proud president of PFLAG Miami. And I'm also the proud parent of 4 children. One is still in the public school system right now. I want to make it very clear, as Jen said, this is not about protecting children. This is about a political agenda. And as my role as a parent and as my role as an advocate for other families in this state, this is extremely scary. We have families that are leaving the state because they cannot properly parent their child, whether it's in the school system, in the medical community. We are not allowing parents to make choices, simple choices for their children. When we talk about the drag ban, we have R-rated movies that are regulated by the state. We know that as a parent, we can make those choices when they're not trusting us as parents to be able to make choices for our children. My child needs a single stall restroom in the school system. My child goes to school all day and has to think about whether they have to go to the bathroom that they're not going to be able to. They're not concentrating on math. They're not able to be in a safe environment to learn. And every child in the state deserves to be respected with their pronouns, with their affirmed name. And the simple act of being able to go to the bathroom has been taken away from our kids. So as parents in this state, we are not being respected and our children are not being respected. I have parents that have adult children that can no longer visit this state because if they are on a flight and they need to use a restroom in our airports, they no longer can. So it doesn't even just affect the children living in this state, it affects LGBTQ families across the nation. And our governor is trying to make our state an example. He's pushing policies that are taking the power away from our teachers. I trust teachers. When my child goes to school in the morning, he's not just learning math and English, he's learning socialization. I want him to be able to go up to his teacher if he has an issue or a problem and trust that teacher. As a parent, that's why my child goes to school. Our governor is taking that away. It's taking away books that my child can see who he is. Visibility is so important, and we know that. We know that our kids need to have these policies in place, these gender affirming policies, so that they can feel safe to learn. And he is literally taking away safety from our children. And as parents, he's taking away the power for us to do what we know is right for our children. Gender affirming care saves lives. We know that. I don't want a politician to tell me what healthcare looks like for my family. I want to be able to have a team, mental health counselors, pediatricians, endocrinologists. And as of today, I no longer have that. So as Nathan said, as Jen said, we will continue to fight this. We will never let our children become political pawns, and we will continue to ask for our allies in the nation and in this state to continue to stand by us as families to make sure that our kids are respected. I don't want to leave this state. I've lived in Florida almost my whole life. This is where I chose to raise my family. But unfortunately, if this continues, good families like mine are going to be forced to leave the state, and that's unacceptable.
Thank you. Thanks for that, Jennifer. Next, I want to bring up a very well-known activist and advocate in the transgender community, someone who helped to organize the historic drag march to the Florida Capitol, the first of its kind that brought hundreds of Floridians from all over the state to the Capitol building in protest of this slate of hate, and also a drag entertainer herself from the Tampa Bay region, Angelique Young.
Hi, hello. Thank you, Joe. Hi, everybody. Just to clear the record, my name is Angelique Young. I'm a trans woman, so my pronouns are she, her, and I'm here to talk to you guys today about the drag ban. As some of you have heard, thanks to Joe, I was a part of the march, the history of the march, but my work started before that, working with Equality Florida, bringing up entertainers and other people of the community really to learn about legislation, about what was going on. And when we all went up there initially, our goal was to fight the drag ban. We wanted people to know that we are not these people, or we're not the types of people that we're being made out to be. You know, we live in a world where people can make free will choices of their own volition, and they should be held accountable for that. And you should not, rightly so, like condemn an entire community for one person's actions. People make mistakes, people make bad judgment calls all the time. If that was the case of, us, penalizing everybody who made a mistake, there would be no politicians, right? Because we all make mistakes. So my whole deal with this is simply that in learning about this ban and watching it go into effect, there are a lot of things that people don't realize how this kind of a ban can truly hurt the community in so many ways. And it is without a doubt directly targeting drag entertainers, because if it wasn't attacking just drag entertainers, this would be a problem for any entertainer that came to our city or came to our state and performed. Janet Jackson, Beyonce, Rihanna, all of these entertainers do things in their show that are somewhat sexualized, or their songs are sexualized. We have like Jennifer said earlier, and like Jen said, there are movies out there who have R ratings that are meant to be put in place to prevent children from attending events that have these things that aren't for them. We're not out here trying to change anybody's child's life. We're not trying to show them that this is the life they should live. We don't want to make anybody that way. The reality is that as a trans woman, I've known I was a woman my whole life. I knew that that was something that I wanted to be. I knew that when drag came about, it was an art form for me. It's something that changed my life because it gave me the ability to perform and entertain. I was a trained dancer before I was ever a drag queen. So that was an opportunity for me to get on a stage faster. It was a fast track for someone like myself, someone who takes pride in their art, not only as a makeup artist, but as an entertainer, as a dancer, as a choreographer, as a show production person. This is a world that I get to do all of those steps and all of those things in one and get paid for my work and actually appreciated for my work, not only by the bars and the places that hire me to do this, but by the public and the people who come to see this. My art form is not endangering to children. It's not endangering to anyone. It's a beautiful thing. I do acrobatics. I do no different than they would see in a circus act, or a gymnast at the Olympics is what I do. My level of training is that high. And I share it with my community on an affordable level. And we even do it for free at Pride events. So what this bill does is it takes away the opportunity for trained people like myself to showcase their talents and their skills and their education in a mindful way, in a way that helps open the eyes to kids that they too can have careers like this. It doesn't necessarily have to be drag. I'm more than just drag. Drag is just a medium in which I use. That'd be like saying a painter is not equal to a sculptor, is not equal to a musician or a dancer. We are all artists in our own way, shape, or form, providing an art skill. And to minimalize us and to put us into this lewd and lascivious act as if all we do is walk around in bathing suits, or all we do is walk around in these clothing. I remind you, we live in Florida, where more women are topless at the beach than they are in the streets. And people can walk around in places like Miami with barely any clothing on. We live in a state that the law is, as long as the whole is covered, we can walk through the streets in thongs and bathing suits and whatever we want, as long as our nipples are covered and our booty holes are covered, basically. Let's be real about it, okay? Being frank, I'm sorry if that offends anybody, but that's the truth. And so when you look at us and you put us in that category, you are truly misguiding and misinformation through the roof. And it can't be done. And as I'm sitting here fighting for that, I have to think about the fact that as a trans woman, my healthcare has already been cut. Before that bill was even passed, my doctors called me and told me that they could no longer service me. Can you imagine the fear that's going to be incited now? If people are already afraid, the laws changing last minute like that, the heartbreak you set on people. People have built their whole lives doing this for decades. Myself, living in Florida for a decade, I've been doing this, and I've built a very nice life for myself. And now you jeopardize that, not only by taking it away from me, but you jeopardize the venues that hire us. You jeopardize the parents. You put them in a place where they can't make a decision for their kids as to what they want to do. And those parents want to go out, they want to spend time. And this is all about an economic interest, because it helps every venue. So this is not a beneficial thing at all. This is going to cause a lot of strife. It's going to put a lot of people and displace a lot of people, which you don't want, because you don't want to give us unemployment at that. So what is it do you want? Do you want us to live in peace and be out of your hair? Or do you want to give us an opportunity to live the lives we came here to do with freedom in mind? This is the land of the free. We're supposed to be able to be anything we want to be. You're taking that away on so many levels. We're taught from the time we're born and the first day in school that we can be anything we choose to be if we put our minds to it. Now you're going to put an accept list next to that and say that these are the things you can never be or you should never be as long as you're here. Come on, this isn't fair, guys. This isn't a good time to be in this. And I think anybody who supports this or anybody who's backing this has to understand that this has nothing to do with anything other than the fact that you're afraid of what future your child can have, or what future your family can have, or what future seeing this brings. We're not out here doing sex work. We're not out here doing things that are lewd and lascivious. We're simply living our lives and being entertainers on a stage. That's it. No different than Broadway, no different than off-Broadway, no different than a play your child is going to choose to be in at school. That's all I have. I'm sorry, guys.
Thank you so much, Angelique. Angelique decided it was a great day to tell the truth. that's what I think. All right, we're going to land our speaker lineup with the longest serving CEO of an LGBT civil rights organization in the country. She's the founder of Equality Florida. She has more legislative sessions under her belt than any other person on this call, and may be serving in the legislature today. So someone with a lot of perspective and some thoughts to share, our CEO of Equality Florida, Nadine Smith. And Nadine, you're on mute.
Thank you, Joe. You know, at my age, this new technology, I am the executive director of Equality Florida. And most importantly, my wife and I are parents of a sixth grader who is impacted daily by the rhetoric, the hateful rhetoric of this governor, the hostile climate created by Ron DeSantis in his bid to outflank Donald Trump for the White House. Now, I might have assumed that him choosing this day, the International Day Against Homophobia, Biphobia, and Transphobia, was just a sad coincidence. But we have learned with this governor, cruelty is always the point. We've seen it in the way they've constructed these laws. They use vagueness as a sword to inflict maximum harm by having people so fearful of being removed from office, being targeted, that they go beyond the word of the law. And they use the vagueness as a shield so they can in court feign innocent and political accountability for the harm, the very real harm that they're inflicting. And let's be clear about how we got here with nearly 30 years of Republican control. Moderate, reasonable, and rational Republicans have left the building. They've either stepped down from office, others were ousted in primaries, and the few that remained abandoned their values to kiss the governor's ring in hopes that his political success will serve their ambitions as well. Now, a few weeks back, we issued a travel advisory in response to people, conference planners, businesses asking whether the climate in Florida was safe for them, for their families, for their members, for their staff, and their customers. Well, we're not in a position to weigh those factors for anyone. People have to make those decisions for themselves. And so we put out an advisory so they understood exactly what the lay of the land is here in Florida. And we will be updating that advisory based on the bill signed today into law, and we'll issue that guidance once again. These bills have never, ever been about protecting students or parents. In fact, quite the opposite. The architects of these bills are national right-wing think tanks who ask the question, what culture war issue would rile people up now that the vast majority embrace marriage equality? They literally told a New York Times reporter they, quote, threw everything at the wall to see what would stick. And what stuck was an attack on trans youth, trans adults, and the LGBTQ community, along with the racist attacks of whitewashing history under the guise of eliminating critical race theory. That lack of familiarity with trans kids made them and their parents useful targets for DeSantis as he looks to lure Trump's base away from him. The harm DeSantis is inflicting on Florida is real, and it will outlast his time in office. Florida has become synonymous with book bans, whitewashing history, anti-LGBTQ attacks, radicalized right-wing groups, often armed, menacing our families. I saw a clip of an MP in Australia who just used Florida in place of describing the direction they did not want to take, the place they did not want to go, the authoritarianism, the marching fascism. I want to end, though, with some good news, because every day we see Floridians and Americans turning against the policies and the rhetoric of Ron DeSantis. Last night, Jacksonville voters repudiated DeSantis's policies, his rhetoric, and rejected the candidates he endorsed, along with the ones that Moms for Liberty embraced. Even as the GOP majority has rubber-stamped his agenda, DeSantis's national polling numbers have tanked, and other governors of both parties are looking to poach the talent leaving our state as DeSantis creates a brain drain once again in Florida, and the best and the brightest look for places where freedom is more than a campaign slogan. Most importantly, we are flooded with calls and emails from parents who actually have children in schools who are furious that DeSantis uses Orwellian doublespeak to strip them of the ability to get life-saving healthcare for their kids, or has removed any representation from the classroom and from the libraries. This backlash will not stand. We are awake. We will make sure every family is respected and every child is protected. Florida is the front line in this fight against fascism, and we are the resistance. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Nadine. All right, we're going to phase to questions from the press. Catherine from, I think it's Catherine, isn't it? From USA Today, John Harris Maurer, Equality Florida's Public Policy Director, threw a response to what was a more technical question in the chat. Throw a comment in there, Catherine, if you've got some follow-ups, and John Harris will be happy to follow up with you, or we can pull that into the larger group conversation. The next question I want to, well, the second question was from Al Ferguson from Queer News Tonight. Al, I imagine Nadine just touched on some of those questions of timing. Please do jump back into the chat if you have a more specific question after Nadine's comments. Next from Steve at the Sun Sentinel. Steve asks, what is your advice to local communities and organizations that may want to hold Pride events, but are not sure whether they are legal or not? To help answer that question, I want to invite a former state representative and a member of Equality Florida's policy and advising team, former state representative Carlos Guillermo Smith.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Steve, at the Sun Sentinel for the question about what our advice is to LGBT-friendly cities and pride organizers in the wake of the anti-drag bill. Look, what Nadine said earlier is so true and so right. This law, just like so many others, is using vagueness as a sword to intimidate people and to create fear in such a way that they are scared to open their doors to drag performances for fear of retribution, fear of $10,000 fines and fees, fear of jail time as the bill is currently written. But our advice for folks is simple. Don't run, don't hide. That is what the DeSantis administration wants from this anti-drag bill. What we do need to do is carry on, proudly raise our flags as a community. We need to understand the law and educate ourselves on the facts that we need to protect ourselves from being targeted by the DeSantis administration, but the shows must go on.
Here, here.
Oh, there you go. I was also on mute, Nadine. Here, Nadine, or here, Carlos. Well said. The next question we're going to tackle, and Nadine, I'm going to throw this towards you, if this is okay. It's from Jacob Ogles, who is with The Advocate, but also Florida Politics. Other states have had their economies crippled by boycotts and economic responses after similar bills in other states have passed. Do we have any signs of such corporate pushback or any anticipation, I'll add to Jacob's question, of a economic response on these bills in Florida?
Sure. You know, I think you're talking about North Carolina after they passed a bathroom bill, one bill, and companies, concerts canceled, conferences canceled, businesses redirected funds. We are now seeing the Disney Corporation fight back against DeSantis, sue him in court. We are one of the tools that we've put together to help people who live in Florida or are visiting Florida who realize they're coming to the front line of this fight is a tool called opendoorsflorida.com, which is a directory of businesses that have taken a very clear stand that they will not discriminate. They will treat everyone with respect and dignity. They make a specific pledge to support LGBTQ protections at the local, state, and national level. And that has become a tool that increasingly people are requesting, and one that we are going to be expanding. So we do expect and count on the business community, especially businesses that for years have talked about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and understand that that investment is a long-term investment in the growth of their company. That if they want to draw the best and the brightest and retain top talent, that they have to create a environment in their workplace that respects and protects the diverse customer base and the diverse staff. And I would say that there are some companies, it's not an accident that the so-called Stop Woke Act was introduced at the same time as the Don't Say Gay bill. What they have done is looked at those very examples, and they said, what do we need to do to reverse engineer and undercut the ability for a community to respond the way businesses and you know, the entertainment industry and others responded in North Carolina. So they've really sent the message to businesses to stay out of our lane or you're going to get hurt. And the intention of going after Disney was to put an exclamation point behind that threat. But I think as people continue to see that the DeSantis message is not playing well, that even in a place that was the birth of his political career like Jacksonville, we saw the utter rejection of his endorsements, not only having no value in helping to elect people, but arguably hurting candidates. I think that all of us are sending a message to business leaders that when you embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion, you did the right thing, and you did it because your business future demanded it. And now to stray away from those values means that you're making a political decision not to stand on those principles. So I think that we're seeing more businesses begin to step forward and say, we have to choose between a governor who has no guardrails, who will embrace any level of extremism if he thinks it serves his ambitions. And that is not where our customers are, and that's not where the general public is.
The next question I'd like to throw to our Jen and Jennifer's, to Jen Cousins and Jennifer Solomon. This comes from Metro Weekly and John Riley. What consequences are we already seeing due to these bills, even prior to today's signing, especially with respect to, one, the censorship of books, and two, the attempts to discourage public displays of drag, transgender experience, and gender nonconformity? Jen Solomon, do you want to start, and we'll throw it to Jen Cousins next?
I think the overall theme, like we're saying here, is the vagueness. So fear is something that so many parents are expressing. I get calls every day from parents that are just extremely concerned. Is my child going to be safe in school? What is going to be, next year when we register? Is our child going to be able to use their pronouns? I think the vagueness of these laws has really caused parents to reevaluate what they're going to do going forward. And that's so scary as a parent. I mean, that's so scary as a human, right? To not know what their future is going to look like. I think also, as far as banning the books, we've seen this before. This is not new. This is that same playbook, and it never works out well. So for us to see that the target is our children, we're called mama bears for a reason. We're going to stand up and make sure that our kids are taken care of. But we have already seen the effects of this. And like Jen had mentioned earlier, last year we were told this is not what this law is going to mean. This is not what you're going to see in the schools. This is just a safeguard to make sure that this is a safe learning environment for all children. It clearly was a lie. So when we see it being expanded this year, obviously the fear is going to be there. What's to come next? What is next session? As a single parent, I understand that, when I first saw one of the bills come out, I was fearful that my child, because I'm an affirming parent, would be taken away from me. We see this in Texas. We see this in other states. Thank God that's not what happened this year in the state, but who's to say that doesn't come next? We have no, I don't trust the government in this state. And that's a really sad thing, that we feel that the elected officials that we put in place to speak for us are not speaking for all of us. The families like mine, the families like Jen, we are not having our voices heard. And I think those are the true effects of what these bills are.
In regards to what we've already been seeing happen over just this past school year alone, some districts in the state instructed their teachers to remove their safe space stickers from their classroom doors. Some were told to take their pride flags down. Others were told you can't have pictures of your same-sex partner on display in your classroom. As far as books, librarians and teachers have been self-censoring what books they make available to kids because, again, with the vagueness of how all of these things are written, nobody is sure what is going to result in a violation of the law. And the DOE has been very vocal in telling educators that if they are found violating this law, they will face a third-degree felony, which is scary for anybody. So naturally, they're going to self-censor themselves. We've seen districts go over the top with what they're censoring. In Escambia County, they banned the book "And Tango Makes Three," which is a picture book about penguins and a true story from the Central Park Zoo. There's no sexual content in the book whatsoever, yet they banned it across the district simply because it featured two male penguins who raise a chick on their own. And we're going to see more of this happening. Like Jen said, the State Board of Education did their own little rulemaking session about a month ago, and they expanded Don't Say LGBTQ to be pre-K through 12. So while that's not law yet, that's up to districts themselves to decide how they're going to comply with it. But I wouldn't be surprised at all if next session we see the official law expand up to grade 12 now as well.
Thanks for that, Jen. The next question is from, I'm trying to keep up, y'all. There's a lot of traffic in the chat. It was, I believe it was News Service of Florida. This was a question about, are there any plans to file any litigation challenging any of the measures signed today? For that, I want to call up, if you're available, John Harris Maurer, Equality Florida's Public Policy Director. What's the state of litigation, John Harris?
Yes, thanks, Joe. As Nadine noted in the comments, we've already seen PEN America file a lawsuit around the book banning provisions and a lot of this censorship in Florida. We've talked to several legal partners. They've been following this slate of bills very closely because of how rife they are with discrimination and potential constitutionality questions. I expect we will see lawsuits over several of these bills, but at this point, I can't share more yet on exactly which bills and which partners, but I do fully expect that people will seek recourse in the courts for where we're seeing these government overreaches.
Thank you. Thanks for that, John Harris.
I think it's also, Joe, if I may, fair to say that DeSantis anticipates spending more taxpayer money on lawsuits, on defending these unconstitutional bills, these attacks on basic rights. I believe the legislature just provided an extra $6 million for legal challenges in anticipation. Again, it's not his money. He doesn't have to worry about spending it, and it all ends up getting him more airtime on right-wing media. So for him, that's just that's a win for his presidential campaign in his mind, no matter what it costs the taxpayers.
So I'm seeing some more traffic on some specific questions. That's a good segue, actually, to name that anybody who wants to do some one-on-one with members of the Equality Florida policy team, there's a lot of ground to cover in all of these bills and in the bills that have already passed. In total, there were 22 anti-LGBTQ bills that were filed in Florida's legislative session in 2023. The substance of 17 of them were aggregated down through the legislative process into 8 bills that passed this legislature in 2023. So that is, as I said at the top of the call, the most anti-LGBTQ bills we've ever seen filed in Florida, and it is certainly the most that we've ever seen passed. They are sweeping in their implications for the freedoms of LGBTQ Floridians and tourists and those who think about making the decision someday to call Florida home. So we're happy to go deep with you all if that's helpful in any number of areas. I want to open before we close off, I think I got all the questions, but I just want to open the channel one more time. If you're a reporter who didn't quite get your question in, or you have a follow-up, feel free to just jump up, like go off mute and chime in, and we'll take any last minute questions before we close out for the day.
Joe, I wanted to ask about what we're watching the GOP say about Equality Florida. I have, in the last 2 weeks, seen unprecedented comment from GOP about Equality Florida and money and resources and fundraising and salaries, et cetera. What do you think about what the governor's mansion and Tallahassee is saying about Equality Florida specifically? And to the specific question, is it an attempt to divide the LGBTQ community among ourselves?
Yeah, well, I'll take that one, Joe. Any insult hurled at us from the governor's mansion, I'll wear as a badge of honor. And if they think that coming after us and attacking us will divide our community, they've miscalculated. I would say the community across the state of Florida is more united. We huddle together more closely because of the attacks that we're enduring. And when I say we are the resistance, I think that you will see all across the state with every organization, large or small, volunteered or staffed, that we are ready to fight back because they're coming after our kids. They're coming after our rights. They're trying to drag Florida backwards in a way that should be setting off alarm bells across the country. And it's not the first time we've seen this. Last time Moms for Liberty were called Daughters of the Confederacy. Last time it was the Johns Committee eliminating Black leadership and civil rights advocates and quote homosexuals from public education. Then it was Anita Bryant using the exact same rhetoric of calling us groomers, implying that our very existence was a threat to children. All of that messaging they have hurled at us. So insults from the governor's office mean absolutely nothing except that we're obviously hitting him in a way that is making them react. So we're just going to apply more pressure the more they lash out at us, because what we have on our side are actual families, real people who are being hurt. He sees it as a political calculation, but these are our lives.
Well said. Well, I want to thank the advocates who are doing the work all across the state, and the folks who joined us here today to tell their families' stories, their personal experiences, and to speak for the hundreds of thousands of LGBTQ Floridians and parents of LGBTQ youth across the state that are impacted by this slate of hate. Thank you, Jen Cousins. Thank you, Jennifer Solomon. Thank you, Nathan Brumer. Thank you, Angelique Young, for your leadership. As always, thank you, Carlos Guillermo Smith and John Harris Maurer, members of the Equality Florida policy team, who help us to understand what is coming at us and interpret it and make it accessible to all of you. And thank you, Nadine, of course, for your words. Thanks for friends in the press. If you have any follow-ups, please feel free to reach out to us, and we're available for one-on-ones as you need. Thanks so much for the time.